Hi, I'm Robin Gully.
I'm John Justin.
We're your Ward 2 council people here in West St. Paul, here to give you the council recap for the 8th of December 2025, which
the last one of the year.
The last meeting of the year. Mm-hmm. So don't expect a recap from us on the 23rd because we will not be here.
Nope.
But we will be back in January.
Yes.
So
see ya 2025.
See ya in 2026.
I was bidding a farewell to 2025.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a fond farewell, but a farewell.
It's a farewell, for sure. All right, time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
We had kind of a long council meeting, but actually there's not that much to talk about. No. So we'll see how long we keep you before we let you go.
And we didn't have open council work session. If you're wondering why we're not talking about it, we didn't have one today.
We didn't have open council work session. So we started right at 6:30 with the council meeting. And the very first thing that we did on the council meeting agenda was the Good Neighbor Awards.
Yep.
So we, this was our first time doing the Good Neighbor Awards. People from the community nominated folks who they thought were exceptionally good neighbors.
It used to be, you may remember the Outstanding Property Awards, which were tied to just basically upkeep of properties, which is super important, don't get me wrong, but this was an attempt to change it to other ways that people contribute to being neighbors and good neighbors, kind of widening that net so it's not about like the plantings that you've done in your yard, which again, not saying anything bad, and some of these probably are related to that, but also just bringing it out a little bit. And you'll see on a couple of these that that's clearly something that wouldn't have happened before, which I think is really cool to incorporate some people that are outside of what maybe would have been the scope before.
So first we'll just list off the people that were here. Chris Kelly, Kevin Hendricks, Donna Ludeking, I hope I'm saying that right, and Mary Heath. And three of the folks that were highlighted for real like upkeep and like good neighborly decorating efforts and like efforts to help people. So Chris Kelly was highlighted for his really helping his neighbors out when it came to like home maintenance and repairs, which actually like would not have been on the Outstanding Property Awards.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then also Kevin Hendricks for the West St. Paul Reader, but also for organizing bike events and things like that, and some artwork or work on art stuff. And then the last two were kind of a pair. And they're a pair of people that actually decorate at the Dakota, which is at 900 Robert Street. So again, not something we would have seen because it's actually inside. Although I think that Donna, I believe, also does all the plantings on the outside of the Dakota. I drive by the Dakota all the time. It is really cool. It is really beautiful out there, and it's neat to see that sort of recognition. But a lot of it was recognition of how the community inside the Dakota appreciates the way that they decorate common areas and things like that. So it was a lot of fun to see kind of a different take. Again, nothing against, I've seen some beautiful property awards when we were doing the Outstanding Property Awards, and that still could be part of this, but I think it's neat to spread it out and say, well, being a good neighbor is like maintaining and really having a beautiful lawn and plantings and whatever, but it's also helping out the people around you. And all of those things kind of intertwine, but it's cool to give a little bit more of a wider scope for that than I think we had in the past.
Yeah. The next thing that we talked about on the agenda, and we'll, I think, take this all in one big chunk because honestly, we've been talking about it for 3 years. So 150 Thompson Avenue. Yeah. So this, you'll remember, is the former YMCA site, the site that was going to be the Hy-Vee, and the site that is now going to be more multifamily housing.
Yep.
So what we did today was we took up a number of parts of this, but the main things that I think people really were paying attention to, first of all, is it going to happen? And the answer is yes.
Yep.
So the things that we took up tonight had to do with actually like giving the approvals to make the things happen, to make this project happen. The second part was that we had a lot of our building trades brothers and sisters out to talk about just the importance of doing it with prevailing wage and with I think a lot of union labor, and so we were grateful for all the folks that came out. And then What else should we
Well,
talk about?
a couple notes. So,
Yeah.
because I know the prevailing wage thing has been a thing that's been talked about, and we've talked about it and all of that. So the way this turned out is what we had a prevailing wage clarification. What that means is there is a component of prevailing wage that allows for apprenticeships. And the way that we currently have a prevailing wage written, apprenticeships are not, that comes from the state side, but there's nothing in there about that. So some of it is the fact that obviously an apprenticeship is not going to require that apprentice to be paid prevailing wage, because the purpose of apprenticeship is a learning on the job, being trained by people that are above you. And so I think that's been part of the trickery of some of these conversations about prevailing wage, is that we aren't talking about the apprenticeship program, which is really kind of ingrained in a lot of union labor. So that was really, it was a clarification. It was not a exemption to the prevailing wage, so it fits within it, but it was felt that it would be best to specify for clarity for this, because it's such a big project, exactly what's expected. So we're still going to get $4 million in public benefit out of this. And that is, I thought about this, and I'm looking back at other TIF projects that we've seen up until now that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I don't think in total all of them put together add up to $4 million of public benefit. And so at the end of the day, this is a really good deal. It is not as, we will not have the full vision of the park as we've seen it. I want to make sure people understand that does not mean the park is not going to happen. The land will be deeded to the city. The clearing, the grading, all of that stuff, one of the parking lots, some pedestrian crossings, improvements on Crawford Drive, other stuff are all going to be done. We will have to come up with a way to fund the park, but we are actively working on talking to the state about the possibility of this having a regional impact, which could get us money for the completion of the park. We have other park funds that we can use and other funds that we can move around. So I don't want people to think like, okay, this went through and we lost the park, because I think that is a misnomer on how to look at it. We're still getting the land. We will still have that park. It may take a while, because obviously we're not going to run out and hit the residents with a huge hit to pay for all of the park amenities. So we're
going to talk about the budget in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the budget in a minute. But it may take a while. I mean, we may have to build portions of it, but we're committed to that park. It's going to happen. So overall, big news is it's been 3 years. We finally have that nailed down. At this point, I will make one other clarification. If for some reason the financing for the developer does not go through, then we'll move on. We have a plan for that. We have reissued the bonds so that we're not locked into having to pay them off in February. We have another 3 years, so hopefully none of this will be necessary. But if for some reason the developer can't find the funding to get this through, which is the stage they have to go to after this. They can't do the funding until they get through this whole process because they don't know the numbers. If for some reason that happens, we do have contingency plans about where we can go, who else we can market it to. We now have a plan for what we think it should look like, so we can approach another developer with that work already done. So, but
this isn't the last you've heard of this project.
No, but we are so much further along than we have been in the past 3 years that it's, from here, we'll just keep an eye on it. But I, for one, am happy to finally have this over the finish line in a way that I think everybody is pretty satisfied with. So. Yeah.
So that's 150 Thompson. That's
Speaking of money,
latest on 150 Thompson. And now we're going to talk about the budget. We've certainly been hearing from a lot of folks who have seen the estimated property tax statements. Here is a little bit of good news for that. Where we originally started with our budget, and we like to start with a high number, right? And then work our way down because we like to start with all right, like, how are we going to fully fund everything, and what's like the most amount that we could put on the table. So that number was 15% increase, which strictly speaking, and I don't know if I can do a good enough job of explaining how we calculate our property taxes to, in the future, I'll try to do a sort of reminder about what the property tax numbers mean. But anyway, it was going to be that was the number that was on the table to begin with. Then it was about 8%. And now now we've gotten it down to, well, I should say our city staff and our
and us, because we
city
did make some
manager and our
decisions.
council.
Yeah, there's a collaborative effort with everybody.
Absolutely, have gotten it down to just under 6%. So I realize that doesn't, so that might not line up with exactly what you see on your statements, because if your house has gone up in value, then you're going to see a greater increase on your taxes anyway. And so we know that this can be a challenge for folks. One thing that, and then I bet you have some stuff to say about this, but one thing that I will say, and I brought this up in the council meeting, because we heard from a couple of people who said, I'm on a fixed income, this increase is really, really difficult for me. Totally get it. One thing that I do want to just bring up is that if you find yourself really struggling, if you're a senior and you find yourself really struggling to pay your property taxes, there are state programs that are available to help offset the cost of property taxes. If you're interested in that, please reach out to any of us and ask us, because we can help you, or reach out to the city and we can help you find those.
City staff definitely is very happy to help you with that too. So a couple things that I would say about this. So the number one thing is, when you looked at your proposed statement and you gasped and fell over for a second, which I had the same moment. A couple things. So the number that they had on there would be that 8%. So that the city taxes you saw on that statement will be lowered. The other thing to remember is the city taxes are only a portion of what you see on that statement. Dakota County, I know, went up. Various other things went up. Home valuations went up. So even with that lower levy increase than we've had traditionally, I've seen some much bigger levy increases than that in my time on the council. We are not the only contributor to the school board. There's all of these things. And so what we did is we tried to keep it as tight as we could without pushing it off, so you just end up paying more next year, because that doesn't help anybody. And actually, if you do look at it, and there was a chart comparison in the meeting, I don't think it was in the packet, where we are actually below the statewide average and the Dakota County average pretty significantly, because I think Dakota County cities averaged at 8% and the state was more like 9 point something. And so holding it to, we're not patting ourselves on the back, but holding it to under 6%, while, and I will mention this all the time, one of the things that does the biggest portion of your property taxes in West St. Paul goes to public safety, police, fire, etc., by a large margin. There's a graph out there somewhere, it's notable. And one of the things that we've heard from residents and we've done is fully staffing our police force, which we are fully staffed. I keep mentioning this. We're the only city one of the few cities that is fully staffed. Most cities are struggling. In order to do that, and in order to get the right people in those positions, you have to pay a commensurate wage to everybody else. And so we've been catching up with that so we can recruit and retain experienced officers here, experienced firefighters, experienced EMTs. These are the people that you don't want to have a shortage of. And so that is part of it, is that you're always, that is the battle. And every year, barring catastrophe, wages just go up.
They go up.
And the biggest contributors to this are wage increases and public safety. And those are the two places where there's really no fat to cut. And we did do some things, like we did change our vision for what we were doing with the pool to make sure that the pool would stay open, but without expanding the pool. Because we heard from people that we really needed to keep this levy change as low as possible. So hopefully I know it will be lower than what you saw on that little blue piece of paper when you get, I think it's the pink piece of paper or whatever. So that's good news. Our portion will be lower. I can't speak to anybody else. But just a reminder that there are things it's a more complicated process than, it's not just us deciding to go do something big and fun and weird. It is actually, a lot of this is just maintenance of the services that you have right now, and the returning costs of that.
Well,
and health insurance, which went up 8%, by the way, which is a big portion.
Which is a big portion of it.
Yeah.
I will say also that our philosophy in general as a council, so I think I can definitely say this about me coming into the council, but I think that a lot of my other council members would agree with this, that
we'll see.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll speak for myself and say this, that that there has been, and not just in West St. Paul, but like in a lot of cities, and then, you know, we've done major investments in West St. Paul, but there's been a history of being, what is it? Penny foolish and pound, wait, what?
Yeah. Penny-wise,
Pennywise
dollar
and
foolish.
dollar
Penny-wise, dollar
foolish.
foolish, yes.
And so essentially, like, not keeping up with the rising costs because you don't want to increase taxes. And the problem with that is that when I came onto the council, and, you know, I was just having a conversation with our city manager about this a couple weeks ago, my memory is that, like, for example, 70% of our roads were graded at a C or lower. Now we're down to 70% of our roads being graded at a B or higher. So we've been playing, and that's just one among many things, but we've been playing catch up with maintenance in our city. And we're doing a better job than, I think we're doing a better job than some of our neighboring cities at doing that kind of catch up. I'm very proud of it. So I'm not slamming our like neighboring cities. I'm just saying that we've done a lot of work to try to catch up and to be in a good place with our city maintenance and with making sure that we have like a real plan for replacing infrastructure that's you know, going out of commission and things like that. But it's not easy because it does mean really holding the line on doing those increases on a smaller level year over year over year. And I'm sorry, but also like it will prevent, hopefully, you know, I can't see the future, and there might be some kind of catastrophe in the economy or something like that we can't foresee. But the idea is that we, you know, do smaller increases year over year over year so that you don't have a 20% increase when you and so that we're not playing massive catch up on streets that have not had any maintenance for 10 years too long.
And we are seeing a flattening of that curve, and we have been for the last, I think it's at least 4 years, where we aren't seeing those. I mean, I'd have to look back and see what the other levy increases were. This might be the lowest I remember in a while, you know, which is interesting because we're actually sitting in a much better position with a lower levy increase. But yeah, and so that is the eventual goal. Is what is the problem? And I think the city manager alluded to this, is when it's the shock to the system of these huge, I mean, nobody likes to open that statement and go like, oh, well, there goes another, you know, however many dollars. And I think the average home, the property increase from the city side, I think is $230 for the year. So it's about $20 a month, you know, and $20 is $20, and I'm not minimizing that at all, but it's a whole different thing when you get hit with, and I think I had one of these one year, you know, $1,000 increase, which, you know, or more. And, again, one of the good things about living in West St. Paul in the time I've lived here is, you know, our houses have become much more valuable. The real estate market in West St. Paul is much, much, much better than it was 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago. And the downside to that, of course, is that if you own a home, or if you're in an apartment and you're paying the offset of the property taxes for the apartment owner, when your building becomes more valuable, you are going to pay more in property taxes. And one of the people that came up and spoke tonight spoke about looking back. They had they bought their home here, I want to say it was 20 years ago.
I think she said in the 90s, but...
And they'd sold their home in St. Paul and bought a home for the same price in West St. Paul. And she did the due diligence of looking it up. And it's $4,000 more in property taxes for their St. Paul equivalently valued thing as the West St. Paul thing. And again, all of this sounds like vague excuses, and it's not. It's always hard to get people to understand because it's so weird and complicated why we don't see declines in property taxes. But you would have to have an economic upheaval or an extremely strange turn of events for property taxes to start to decrease. And in truth, it's probably not a great sign if they decrease. What we're trying to do is get them to a nice level point where they're slightly increasing every year. And again, wages are not going to get lower. The cost of having an officer on the street is not going to go down. The cost of repairing a road is not going to go down. So if you stay at a maintenance level with nothing added, your property taxes are still going to go up
Yeah.
a fairly considerable amount.
The only way they would probably go down overall would be if property values went down, but then that would be really tricky because we'd still have the same costs of upkeep, and
we still have to spend the same amount. So it just changes where it lands.
So
anyway, every time when we do the budget at the end of the year, this is the same conversation I feel like we always have. And again, I'm not making light of anybody feeling like, oh, this is onerous to pay this much more. Just remember, it's coming from a lot of different entities. It's not just from the city. And I don't think there was anything. I think we were kind of aggressive on what we managed to pull back to get this down at this point, because there is some economic uncertainty right now, and we don't want to see that become more of a hardship than it is if there's something goes wrong. So
but you can see all the numbers. You can go, the documents are available online in the packet, and you can see everything and tell us what you think.
Yeah, we're definitely not trying to wildly increase property taxes, and we're not trying to put a future council in the position of being the ones that are caught kind of like I was in the early days of my council days, with like, oh, there is nothing we can do. It's going to go up significantly this year. And it's not, it's maintenance. It's not, nothing can be cut. And I saw some of those numbers that were a lot more than under 6%.
Yeah. So.
And so we're trying to kind of level it out. And if the projection as we go on, it continues to kind of taper down, so the increases every year are much smaller, which is better than hitting you with a horrible surprise. So
and the other
we're doing
thing
what we can.
Mention is the only staff person that we added this year was a grants writer. And so one of the things that we're definitely trying to do to offset some of these things is get other sources of income, and in a way that we haven't done in earnest in the past. And so we are trying to find other ways to raise the revenue to do the things that
we hired a grant writer, was it last year or 2 years ago? Maybe just last year.
I think it was last year.
And we've gotten a report on how much we've gotten from that grant writer versus what we pay that grant writer. And it is, as somebody who owns a small business, it is a return on investment that I would kill to have. So that added position, I think, will also just help in the long term. It is not going to cost us money to hire that person. It is going to save us money, and actually takes a little bit of stuff off of our police's palette, because they've had to do a lot of organizing,
a lot
of their own grant stuff and fundraising and stuff. So that also frees up officers to not have to do, let me tell you, not their favorite job in the world, which is out soliciting grants. And so I think it's good for everything. So anyway.
All right, that's the budget.
There's the budget.
All right. And then we had 4 charter amendments. We have talked about these quite a lot in the last, videos that we've done. So, but they're not the most interesting charter amendments you could imagine. The main things are, so we have a couple of charter amendments about vacating right-of-ways. We've talked about these quite a bit.
Yep.
So the city owns, I think we've been trying to clean it up, but historically we've owned several tracts of land across the city. Let's just say several. I mean, it's like quite a lot of tracts of land across the city that were intended, originally set aside to be like, right-of-ways or alleys or, and in some of those places, we've never done anything with them. And so sometimes, and you hear us talk about this from time to time, sometimes we vacate those right-of-ways and we say, hey, you property owners on this block, we used to own this tract of land behind your house, and now we are giving it back to you.
Yep.
For the most part, people are like either neutral about that or happy about it.
Yeah. They've probably been maintaining it, not knowing it's not. A lot of times people don't know it's not theirs.
Right.
And then suddenly you tell them, you're like, really? I thought my property line went to where it was.
Anyway.
Exactly, yeah. And some of them are literally unusable.
Yes.
Like there are places where like, well, we could try to put an alleyway through there, but we'd have to take down these 4 sheds that people built thinking that was on their land, and we don't want to do that. No, and we don't need the alleyway and all of that stuff. So the main thing is that the way that our language, charter cities are weird, we do our own thing, right? Our language was that it was an ordinance rather than a resolution, which even caused apparently some problems where staff would present it to the county, whatever term, the county will call it assessor, that's probably not the right term. And they'd be like, why is this an ordinance? It needs to be a resolution. They'd have to come back and fix it. So this is not anything that's going to be a drastic change. And if you don't mind, I'll just bounce through
go
the other
for it.
ones. Another one is changing the official publication rules. That one's just if a paper basically that is our official record goes out of business, that it gives us some leeway into how we can find a new paper of record. This is not an imaginary thing because we did lose our paper and had to scramble to get a new paper of record.
And we're required by the state, state law to
have this system of
Yes.
notification, but it's, with unfortunately print media having a rough time of it right now, we need to have a little more leeway because you don't want to jump ship and you don't want to be held to a thing where, for example, when we're talking, the next two actually can both be about budget a little bit. You don't want to have be a situation where like the person who is the only available public record can get you over a barrel and charge you whatever they want because you have to do it right now. And so you don't have negotiation. So that's another minor change. The last one is increasing, the number of residents needed to investigate the city affairs, which sounds weird. We do our own audit. It's basically a secondary audit, forced by a certain amount of the population asking for it. Currently, and this is an old rule, is 100 people, which maybe was a much larger percentage of the West St. Paul voting public then than it is now with probably twice as much population. And so the charter decided to change it to 5% of the voters in the last presidential election, which is still a low bar to go over. The reason I say it's a budget thing is that is an extremely expensive thing to have to do. And obviously, we are doing our own transparency. We want transparency. If there's a reason, you should be able to get over that line. But what you don't want is something where if you got a group of people together that just were kind of trying to do something, I won't say as a nuisance, but it's not that hard to get 100 people together on a petition.
Especially these days when you can just circulate something online.
Yeah, exactly. And so that 100 was definitely too low a bar for something that costs that much and would come directly. That would have to be pulled out of the budget. It would come directly out of every other taxpayer's pocket. So I think that's also a good change and probably sensible and just was antiquated, honestly. It wasn't like we're trying to not do it. You'd be able to do it. If we give you cause to do it, I guarantee you can get to 5% of the last presidential election. But I could probably get to 100 people without spending more than a day on it. And that it needs to be a little bit of a higher bar for something that is I don't know if we've ever even had one requested.
I don't think so.
This is
not that I'm aware.
I'm not issuing a challenge to see if you can do it. But it's an extremely infrequent thing, but just as a protection and kind of a reality check on what's different now from when that section of the charter was written, when we had a much, much smaller voting population in West St. Paul.
That was it for the council meeting. Sorry, I'm looking like.
I think so. I think that was everything, and then the EDA was just the final.
EDA, but it was just about the 150 Thompson. Again,
yeah, the developer agreement and clawback language that we have for completion dates and things like that. And that was it.
So that wraps up 2025.
That is 2025 in a nutshell, as far as I know.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Absolutely.
Hope it's a really good holiday and a really good December. And
hopefully there isn't a foot of snow outside of this concrete windowless bunker that we're filming this in, because I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. But if there is, be safe. Yeah. And we'll make sure that the snowplows get out.
That's right.
And we appreciate all of you. And Happy New Year.
See you later.
See you in 2026.
Bye-bye.